Cole Callahan stood quietly at the edge of the dojo, wearing worn boots and a faded jacket, a stark contrast to the polished belts and confident stares around him. A black belt watched him with open contempt, mistaking silence for weakness, assuming a janitor had no place on the mat. What happened next would leave everyone in that room completely speechless and quietly change more than one life forever. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from. And if you believe in stories about quiet strength, faith, and second chances, subscribe to the channel. Because tomorrow, another powerful story awaits. No one in the room laughed anymore. Not because of fear alone, but because something invisible had crossed a line no one knew how to step back from. A man in a black belt lay flat on the mat, chest heaving, eyes wide and unfocused, as if the ceiling lights had suddenly become too bright. His belt had twisted loose, no longer the symbol of control it was meant to be. Just a strip of black cloth digging into the floor. Around him, the polished wood reflected frozen faces, students who had come expecting a demonstration and instead found themselves standing inside a silence thick enough to press against the lungs. A child's sob broke it. "Dad, you hurt him again." The man everyone had been mocking only moments earlier was already kneeling. He moved slowly, deliberately, as if speed itself were dangerous. His hands were open, palms empty, fingers spread, not the posture of a fighter, but of someone trying very hard to prove something to himself. He was tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of build that spoke of years of physical labor rather than vanity. A weathered olive-green canvas jacket hung from him like an old uniform he never quite took off, its sleeves creased and worn at the cuffs. Beneath it, a plain gray shirt clung to a chest that rose and fell with controlled breaths. A short, rough beard shadowed his jaw, and faint silver threaded through his dark hair at the temples. There was a scar above his left eyebrow, thin, pale, almost invisible, unless the light struck it just right. "I stopped," he said quietly, his voice low and steady. "I stopped in time." No one answered him. No one seemed certain what he meant. In front of him stood a German shepherd, large and powerful, black and tan coat sleek and well-kept, muscles tense beneath the fur. The dog's amber-brown eyes never left the man on the floor. He did not bark. He did not bare his teeth. He simply stood there, blocking the space between the kneeling man and everyone else, like a living barrier that needed no explanation. A simple black leather collar circled his neck, scuffed from years of use, metal ring dulled by time. Someone whispered, barely audible, "What just happened?" No one replied. The man on the mat shifted, pushing himself up onto one elbow. His face was flushed with humiliation, more than pain. He was younger than the kneeling man, cleaner somehow, his black G crisp, his hair neatly styled, his expression still clinging to authority, even as his hands trembled. "You think this is over?" he spat. "You think you can just—" The kneeling man didn't look at him. His attention was on the child standing a few feet away, a small girl with light brown hair tied low at the back of her neck. She wore a pale beige hoodie that swallowed her thin frame, and a pair of worn sneakers scuffed at the toes. Her eyes were wide, wet with fear, her hands gripping the thick fur at the German shepherd's neck, as if anchoring herself to something solid. "Are you okay?" the man asked her. She nodded, though her grip tightened. She didn't trust the room yet. Behind them, a laugh, dry, brittle, cut through the tension. "It was just a light demonstration," said the man in the black belt, forcing himself upright. "Or did you forget where you are?" The kneeling man closed his eyes. "Not now. Please, not now." When he opened them again, his gaze was steady, but something deeper had shifted behind it. "Don't make me continue," he said. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't even anger. It was a warning. At the edge of the mat, a young woman stepped forward half a pace before stopping herself. She was in her late 20s, athletic but not imposing, her dark brown hair tied back tightly as if she couldn't afford distraction. Her gray guy bore the marks of long use, the fabric softened by sweat and repetition. A purple belt circled her waist, not the highest rank in the room, but high enough to know when something was wrong. Her eyes flicked between the men, sharp and unsettled. "This isn't teaching," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "This is something else." The man in the black belt shot her a glance sharp enough to cut. "Sit down, Harper." She didn't. She swallowed, but she didn't step back either. Before anyone could speak again, the child tugged at the kneeling man's sleeve. "Dad." Her voice dropped to a whisper, but the room was so silent that everyone heard it. "If you hit him again, and he dies, will you disappear too?" The question landed like a blade. The man froze. His breath caught for half a second, just long enough for anyone watching closely to notice. The German shepherd shifted, sensing something change, his ears angling forward, body leaning ever so slightly, as if preparing to move. 1 second passed, then another. "I'll stay," the man said at last. "No matter what happens, I'll stay." He rose slowly to his feet. The man in the black belt snarled and lunged forward, pride drowning out caution. His movements were sharp, aggressive, driven by the need to reclaim the room. The German shepherd growled, a low, restrained sound that vibrated through the floor. "Hold your dog," someone shouted. The man's voice cracked through the air, hard and absolute. "Stay." The dog stopped. Muscles quivered. Obedience won by the thinnest margin imaginable. What followed was not a punch, not a kick, not anything the students had drilled 1,000 times. The man stepped forward and placed his open palm against the other man's chest. That was all. The impact came not from force, but from precision. The man in the black belt stumbled backward, feet leaving the mat as if pulled by an unseen wave, and crashed onto his back, breath knocked clean from his lungs. Silence swallowed the room whole. No cheering, no gasps. Just the weight of what everyone had witnessed settling into their bones. The child began to cry again. "Dad, you hurt him." The man knelt once more, pulling her gently into his chest. "No," he murmured. I stopped before it could become worse. No one knew why that mattered so much to him. No one knew why his hands trembled now that they were empty. No one knew why the dog pressed closer to his side, as if guarding something more fragile than flesh. And no one in that room knew that the man they had laughed at was not afraid of losing a fight. He was afraid of winning. If this story touched your heart, remember, sometimes God's greatest miracles are not the blows we strike, but the hands He helps us hold back. Please like, share, and comment below with where you're watching from. And subscribe to Angels in Uniform so we can continue telling stories of grace, restraint, and quiet miracles. He didn't remember the first time he started avoiding mirrors. It wasn't a decision, not the way a man decides to quit drinking or change a job. It happened quietly, the way rust forms on metal. Slow, patient, inevitable. One day he caught his reflection in a dark window and felt his stomach tighten like a fist. And after that, he learned to keep his eyes down. Keep moving. Keep busy. Keep invisible. The world was full of people who looked at men like him and saw only what they wanted. Danger, strength, a weapon, a story. He had spent years learning how to become the opposite of a story. That was how Cole Rook Callahan lived now. 40-something, tall and broad, shoulders squared not from pride but from habit. A quiet weight to him like a door that never fully opens. His olive-drab canvas jacket was faded at the seams, the cuffs frayed, the collar softened by too many cold mornings. A plain gray shirt sat beneath it, and a dark, practical cargo pant hung from his hips, pockets heavy with small tools and things that made him feel useful without being noticed. His boots were scuffed but clean. The old military watch on his wrist bore scratches like tiny maps of older days. His short beard never grew long enough to look like rebellion, but it never disappeared either. Just enough to blur the face, just enough to keep strangers from looking too closely. The scar above his left eyebrow was the smallest thing about him, and somehow the loudest. Havoc was always there. A German shepherd, 5 or 6, black and tan with a clean working coat, and an intelligent, steady gaze the color of dark amber. He moved like a professional, even though he wore no vest, no patches, nothing to announce himself except the simple black leather collar that looked worn in the best way, like it had kept promises. Havoc didn't bark much. He didn't need to. He communicated in muscle tension and ear angles, in the way he placed his body between Cole and whatever felt wrong. He watched people the way Cole watched exits, not with suspicion, but with responsibility. Sometimes Cole thought the dog understood him better than any human ever had. Sometimes he hated Havoc for that, because Havoc made it harder to lie. The nights were the worst. Cole could survive the day. Mops, buckets, the steady rhythm of cleaning that let his mind float somewhere safe. But the nights stole his defenses. He would fall asleep for an hour and then wake up drenched, heart pounding, the room too small, the air too thin. In the dark, memory didn't arrive like a story. It arrived like sensation, the sting of sweat in his eyes, the metallic taste of adrenaline, the pressure of hands on his shoulders, a voice saying he was ready, ready, ready. He would sit up, jaw clenched, and stare into nothing while Havoc rose without being asked, padding over to press his warm weight against Cole's leg. The dog never tried to comfort him like a child. Havoc didn't whine. He didn't lick tears. He just stayed, a steady presence, a living boundary, a reminder. You are here, not there. Cole would whisper sometimes, so quietly that even he wasn't sure if he'd spoken aloud. Not again. And Havoc would breathe out in a long, controlled exhale, as if agreeing to a pact. In the mornings, Lily would pretend she didn't notice the shadows under her father's eyes. She was 10, all sharp intuition and quiet observation, with light brown hair tied low and a face that looked innocent until she asked a question that sliced straight through the lie. She wore a pale beige hoodie that swallowed her shoulders and made her look smaller than she was. Jeans rubbed soft at the knees, and old white sneakers she insisted were still good. Lily didn't ask about the nightmares. Not directly. She asked about normal things, school projects, lunch money, whether Havoc needed a new toy. But every now and then, when she thought Cole wasn't paying attention, she'd watch him the way a child watches a storm cloud, measuring, waiting. On the day everything started moving toward that night, Lily found him in the kitchen, rinsing a coffee mug he hadn't even used. His hands were under running water, fingers flexing unconsciously as if they were trying to remember something. Havoc sat at his heel, head tilted, ears attentive. "Dad," Lily said, gentle as a knock on a closed door. "Do you ever miss before?" Cole didn't look up. Before what, kiddo? Before you got so quiet. Her voice was small, but it held weight. Lily had inherited the Callahan stubbornness, but she used it like a compass, not a hammer. Cole swallowed. There were 1,000 answers, and none of them were safe. I'm fine. Lily's eyes narrowed the way his would have, years ago, in a different life. That's not an answer. Havoc rose and walked to the window, pressing his nose against the glass as if smelling something outside. Cole watched the dog, grateful for a distraction, until he realized what Havoc was doing. The dog wasn't looking out. He was listening, waiting, protecting. That was when Cole remembered the first rule he'd learned as a young man, being shaped into something useful. You don't relax. You just learn how to hold tension so it doesn't show. He had been trained for precision, not the sloppy precision of a gym class, but the kind that separated life from death in a narrow hallway. People think the most dangerous men are angry men. Cole had learned the truth. The most dangerous men are calm men. Calm men move without announcing it. Calm men don't threaten, they act. And that was exactly why he'd disappeared. Because once, long ago, he had been calm when he should have been careful. He never told Lily about Mac. He didn't even say the name out loud anymore. Mason Mac Delgado had been his brother in everything but blood. Quick grin, sharp mind, a man who made fear feel like something you could laugh at. Mac's laugh lived in Cole's memory like sunlight, and that was what made it unbearable. Cole could remember the sound of gunfire without flinching. He could remember screams. He could remember the pressure of combat like it was weather. But remembering Mac's laugh felt like standing too close to a grave. Sometimes the name still slipped into his head without permission. Mac. And with it came the moment that ended everything. A half second. A single early movement. A choice made by muscle memory before conscience could catch up. Havoc did something he had never done before. Cole was loading cleaning supplies into his battered pickup when the dog froze. Not alert, not curious, frozen. His ears pinned, his eyes locked on the open tailgate as if staring into a tunnel. Then Havoc stepped forward and placed one paw on Cole's wrist, stopping his hand mid-motion. The pressure was light. The message was not. Cole's pulse jumped. He followed the dog's gaze and saw it. His own right hand hovering over a small metal tool. Nothing dangerous, just an everyday object. But for a moment, the shape of it, the weight, the way his fingers wanted to grip it, dragged him backward into a memory so sharp it made his vision blur. Havoc pushed again, firmer this time, eyes unblinking. Cole's throat tightened. He slowly unclenched his fist. The dog didn't relax until Cole's hand opened fully, palm empty. A chill traveled down Cole's spine. Because it wasn't a dog's instinct. It felt like a warning, as if Havoc had sensed the exact edge where the past tried to crawl back into the present. Cole bent and pressed his forehead briefly to Havoc's head. "Thank you," he whispered, and hated himself for needing it. That afternoon, Cole took Havoc and Lily to the dojo. He told himself it was just another routine, just another cleaning shift, just another way to earn a paycheck without being seen. He didn't tell himself the real reason. The dojo had rules, structure, a mat, a place where violence was supposed to be contained by respect. Cole liked the illusion of that. He thought maybe he could live inside it, safely, as long as he stayed on the edges. Inside, the air smelled of sweat and disinfectant. The hum of fluorescent lights made everything feel slightly unreal. There were photos on the wall, tournaments, belts, smiling people frozen in victory. Cole avoided looking at them. He didn't want to remember what it felt like to be proud of his own hands. Brent Kincaid wasn't important to Cole at first. Just another loud man in a world full of loud men. Brent wore his black GI-like armor, immaculate and sharp, black belt tied with theatrical precision. His hair was styled neatly, almost too neatly, and his smile never reached his eyes. Those eyes carried something Cole recognized instantly, the constant hunger to be seen as powerful. Brent's confidence was real, but it was built on a fragile foundation: approval, hierarchy, dominance. The kind of power that only exists as long as other people agree to kneel. Harper Quinn was different. She trained with her hair tied back tight, gray gi-worn and softened with use, purple belt knotted with practical care. She moved with quiet discipline, the kind that comes from choosing your principles over your ego. Harper's eyes weren't hungry. They were awake. Cole noticed how she watched Brent, how her jaw tightened when he mocked someone, how she swallowed words and saved them for a moment that mattered. A person like that didn't stay silent forever. Cole knew. He'd once admired people like that. Then he'd learned what it cost. That night, the night from Chapter 1, had not begun with violence. It began with laughter. Brent's laughter. A joke at the expense of the man with the mop. A little performance to feed his status. Cole tried to disappear into the work the way he always did. Head down, hands busy, heart locked. But the past doesn't stay buried just because you refuse to name it. The past is patient. It waits for a shove, a taunt, a careless touch. It waits for the wrong man to decide he has the right to humiliate someone in front of a child. Cole didn't know when exactly he crossed the line from invisible to present. Maybe it was when Lily's fingers tightened around Havoc's collar. Maybe it was the way Havoc's body shifted, sensing danger before words could form. Maybe it was Harper's voice, calm, moral, impossible to ignore, cutting through the room like a clean blade. Or maybe it was simpler. Cole had promised Lily he would stay, and promises are heavy when you've broken one before. He did not want to fight. That was the truth. He did not want to win. He did not want to be remembered. He wanted a quiet life and a small kitchen table and a child who never had to learn what her father was capable of. But there had been one night, years ago, when he had moved too early. 1/2 second, one choice, and everything that mattered had fallen apart. He could still feel it sometimes, like a ghost sensation in his muscles. The moment he realized he was about to be tested again, and he was terrified, not of losing control in front of strangers, but of finding out that control was never really his in the first place. If this chapter stirred something in you, remember? God's miracles are often quiet. A hand that chooses restraint, a warning that arrives in love, a second chance offered before a tragedy repeats. Please like, share, and comment what city you're watching from. And subscribe to Angels in Uniform so you don't miss the next chapter. Because what happened before that night will change everything. The room did not return to normal after that night. It pretended to, the way people do after witnessing something they don't yet know how to name. Mats were wiped down. Shoes lined up by the wall again. Voices resumed, lower than before, careful, as if the air itself might remember and react. But the silence had changed shape. It lingered in corners, in glances that lasted 1/2 second too long, in the way no one laughed quite as freely when Cole, Rook Callahan, crossed the floor with a bucket in his hand. Cole felt it immediately. He had lived long enough in the margins to recognize when attention followed him like a shadow. It wasn't admiration. It wasn't fear either, not exactly. It was uncertainty. People didn't know where to place him anymore, and that unsettled them. Cole kept his head down, shoulders relaxed, moving with the same steady pace he always had. Olive jacket, gray shirt, cargo pants, boots quiet against the floor. The old watch ticked against his wrist like a reminder that time, unlike people, never pretended. Havoc stayed close, closer than usual. The German shepherd's black and tan coat caught the overhead lights in muted patterns as he paced at Cole's side, occasionally stopping to scan the room with eyes that missed nothing. At 5 or 6 years old, Havoc had reached that calm maturity where strength no longer needed to announce itself. He didn't posture, he didn't challenge. He simply occupied space with purpose. When students passed too close, he shifted subtly, body angling just enough to say, "Not here." Cole noticed the way people adjusted their paths. Brent Kincaid noticed too. Brent stood near the center of the mat, arms crossed, black GI immaculate as always. He looked the same as he had before. Sharp haircut, clean jawline, a smile that curved easily when eyes were on him. But something behind that smile had fractured. The night before had taken something from him, not his authority, not his rank. Something smaller and more dangerous. His certainty. Brent hated uncertainty. He filled it the only way he knew how. "This isn't how we do things here," Brent said loudly, addressing no one and everyone at once. His voice carried the practiced confidence of a man used to being heard. "We have standards, structure, respect." A few students nodded automatically. Old habits. Brent turned his gaze toward Cole, letting it rest there longer than necessary. "And respect," he continued, "means knowing your place." Cole didn't look up. He wrung out a mop with slow, deliberate pressure. He could feel Lily's eyes on his back from the bench near the wall, her small frame hunched forward, hands folded in her lap like she was trying to make herself smaller. That hurt more than Brent's words ever could. Harper Quinn stood near the edge of the mat. Gray J-sleeves rolled just enough to show forearms marked by training, not vanity. At 26 or 27, she carried herself with a quiet composure that hadn't come easily. Her dark hair was pulled back tight, no loose strands, no room for distraction. The purple belt at her waist wasn't flashy, but it was honest. Harper watched Brent now, jaws set, eyes steady. "You mean his place?" she asked, nodding toward Cole. Brent turned, surprise flickering across his face, before irritation replaced it. "Harper, don't start." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't step back either. "I'm not starting anything. I'm asking." The room held its breath. Brent exhaled sharply through his nose. "This isn't about him. This is about discipline, order. You don't undermine an instructor in front of students." Harper's gaze didn't waver. "You don't humiliate someone and call it instruction." A ripple moved through the room, not sound, but feeling. Several students shifted, glancing between Brent and Harper, unsure where safety lay. Cole felt the tension like a current under his skin. This was the moment. He recognized it with the clarity of experience. The moment when someone else stepped forward and the choice stopped being abstract. Brent's smile thinned. "You're crossing a line." "So did you," Harper replied. Her voice softened, but only slightly. "Last night." The word landed heavily between them. Brent took a step closer, invading her space the way men like him always did when they sensed resistance. "You weren't in charge last night." "No," Harper said. "But I was watching." Cole closed his eyes briefly. He could feel the past stirring, that familiar pull toward action. His hands flexed once, unconsciously, before he forced them still. Havoc felt it too. The dog's ears angled forward, body lowering by a fraction, muscles ready but restrained. This was the part Cole hated most. Not the threat, not the confrontation, the waiting, the knowledge that if he did nothing, someone else would pay the price. And if he stepped in, he might become the thing he feared. Brent turned his attention back to Cole, voice dripping with condescension. "Funny thing about last night," he said. "People see what they want to see. Some little trick, some lucky movement. Doesn't change the facts." Cole finally looked up. His eyes were calm, not challenging, not submissive, just present. "I'm not here to change your facts," Cole said. "I'm here to do my job." Brent scoffed. "Your job?" "To clean," Cole replied evenly. A few nervous laughs escaped the group, dying almost immediately when Brent's expression hardened. "And what about your job as a father?" Brent added, nodding toward Lily. "Teaching your kid it's okay to cause trouble and hide behind a dog?" Lily flinched. That did it. Cole felt something shift, not explode, not break, but realign. The decision sliding into place with quiet finality. He set the mop aside and straightened slowly, fully, his height suddenly undeniable. When he spoke, his voice was still low, still controlled, but it carried a weight that silenced the room. "You don't speak to her," he said. "Ever." Brent laughed, sharp and hollow. "Or what?" Harper inhaled, preparing to step between them, but Havoc moved first. The German Shepherd placed himself squarely at Cole's side, head level, eyes fixed on Brent with a look that was neither aggressive nor friendly. It was the look of an animal trained to read intent, not words. Havoc did something no one expected. He sat, perfectly, calmly, in the middle of the tension, as if making a statement no human voice could articulate. "I am under control. The choice is yours." The room felt it. Even Brent hesitated, the confidence draining from his posture for a split second. Cole's pulse thudded in his ears. Havoc had chosen restraint, not because he was ordered to, but because he trusted Cole to do the same. The realization cut deeper than any insult. If the dog could hold the line, so could he. Cole looked down at Havoc, then back at Brent. "Or nothing," he said, "because I'm not here to fight you." Brent's face reddened. "Then leave." The word echoed. Leave. It was familiar, comfortable. Cole had built a life around leaving rooms, leaving questions unanswered, leaving before things escalated. He felt Lily's presence behind him, small and fragile and impossibly heavy. Harper spoke again, her voice quieter now, but firmer. "If he leaves, this doesn't end. It just resets." Brent turned on her. "This is none of your business." "It is," she replied, "because I stayed quiet once, a long time ago, and someone got hurt because of it." Cole didn't ask who. He didn't need to. Pain had a universal language. Brent looked around the room, searching for support. Some students avoided his gaze. Others looked uncertain, caught between loyalty and discomfort. Authority still protected him, but it was thinning. "Make your choice," Brent said to Cole. "You can disappear again, or you can stand here and pretend you belong." Cole felt the weight of that sentence settle into his bones. Disappear, or stay. The past pressed close, whispering that staying led to ruin. The present countered with Lily's quiet breathing, with Havoc's steady presence, with Harper's unwavering stare. "I'm not pretending," Cole said at last. "And I'm not leaving." The room didn't erupt. There was no applause, no dramatic shift, just a subtle change in gravity, as if something had clicked into alignment. Brent's jaw tightened. Then you're making this harder than it needs to be. Cole nodded once. I know. As he picked up the mop again, the choice settled in his chest like a stone. Heavy, but real. He could still walk away. Even now. But he understood something he hadn't allowed himself to see before. If he left, nothing would change. And if nothing changed, the night they were all pretending to move past would happen again. If this chapter made you pause, remember, sometimes God places us exactly where we don't want to be. Not to punish us, but to stop a cycle before it repeats. Please like, share, and comment your thoughts below. And subscribe to Angels in Uniform so you don't miss the next chapter of this journey of restraint, courage, and quiet miracles. The mat felt different beneath Cole Callahan's boots that night. Not unfamiliar, nothing about it was new, but heavier, as if it carried the memory of every fall, every mistake, every breath taken too late. The overhead lights hummed softly, casting long reflections across the polished floor. People gathered in a loose circle without being told to, instinctively creating space the way animals do when they sense something larger than themselves unfolding. No one spoke. No one joked. Even Brent Kincaid, standing a few steps away in his immaculate black gi, had stopped performing. His jaw was tight, his shoulders stiff, his confidence held together by tension alone. Cole stood opposite him, jacket removed now and folded carefully over a bench beside Lily. Without it, his frame was clearer. Broad shoulders, compact strength, the kind built for endurance rather than show. The gray shirt clung lightly to his torso, darkened slightly with sweat, though he had not moved much. His hands hung relaxed at his sides, fingers loose, wrists neutral. To the untrained eye, he looked unprepared. To anyone who knew, he looked terrifyingly ready. Havoc positioned himself behind Cole, not close enough to interfere, not far enough to disengage. The German shepherd's body was low and alert. Black and tan coat, smooth under the lights, muscles coiled but quiet. His ears flicked at every shift of weight, every change in breath. At 5 or 6 years old, Havoc had learned the difference between noise and danger. Right now, he sensed danger in the stillness. Brent rolled his neck once, then twice, as if trying to shake off something clinging to him. He glanced around, meeting the eyes of his students, searching for reassurance, for hierarchy to restore itself. When he didn't find it, irritation crept in. "This isn't necessary," Brent said, voice sharp. "You made your point." Cole didn't answer. Brent scoffed. "Fine, 1 round, just so everyone understands where the line is." Cole finally lifted his gaze. His eyes were calm, but there was a depth to them now that hadn't been there before, like a door opened just enough to reveal a darker room behind it. "The line," he said evenly, "is control." Brent laughed, though it came out brittle. "You think you're teaching me?" "No," Cole replied. "I'm reminding myself." The words hung in the air, misunderstood by everyone except him. Brent moved first. He stepped in aggressively, feet light, hands up in a textbook guard. His movements were clean, drilled, familiar. He threw a probing jab, fast and precise, aimed not to hurt, but to test. Cole shifted half an inch to the side, letting the fist pass through empty space. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't retreat. He simply wasn't where the punch landed. A murmur rippled through the room. Brent followed with a cross, harder this time, frustration bleeding into technique. Cole leaned back just enough, spine bending with a fluidity that came from years of avoiding things far more lethal than fists. The punch missed by less than a centimeter. Cole could feel the air move against his cheek. The mat creaked softly beneath them. Cole's mind wasn't on Brent. It was elsewhere, on narrow hallways, on door frames splintering under pressure, on commands whispered in darkness. Each movement Brent made pulled a thread from the past, and Cole stepped around it the same way he always had, without thinking, without hesitation. Brent's breathing quickened. "Stop dodging and fight!" Brent snapped, launching into a combination meant to overwhelm: jab, cross, hook. The hook came wide, overcommitted. Cole stepped inside the arc of it, not to strike, to listen. He felt Brent's balance falter, the shift in weight too far forward, the tension in his shoulders telegraphing intent. Cole saw the opening clearly, too clearly. It was the kind of opening he could end things with in less than a second. Havoc felt it too. The dog's body lowered another inch, claws gripping the mat. A low sound vibrated in his chest, not a growl yet, more like a warning hum. His eyes were locked on Brent now, pupils slightly dilated. Cole heard Lily before he saw her. "Dad." Her voice was small, barely strong enough to reach the center of the mat, but it cut through Cole sharper than any blow. He glanced sideways, just long enough to see her standing by the bench, fingers twisted together, face pale. "If you hit him again," she whispered, tears pooling. "If you hurt him like the man in your bad dreams, will you disappear too?" The world slowed. Cole felt the question land not in his ears, but in his chest. Images surged forward unbidden. Mac's grin, Mac's voice, the moment everything went wrong because Cole had moved too early, trusted his body more than his judgment. He felt the old heat rise, the dangerous calm that came before action. This was the edge. He exhaled slowly. "I'm here," he said, not taking his eyes off Brent. "I'm staying." It was a promise, not a guarantee. Havoc did something that made several people gasp. He broke position and moved, not toward Brent, but toward Lily. He sat beside her, pressing his shoulder gently against her leg, anchoring her in place. The tension in his body eased just enough to signal trust. Cole saw it in his peripheral vision and felt something tighten in his throat. The dog had chosen to protect the child, not confront the threat. As if he understood that this fight wasn't about dominance, but about what happened after. A strange stillness followed, the kind that felt almost sacred, like a moment where something unseen was watching closely. Brent lunged again, anger now fully in control. He threw everything into the strike, a reckless attempt to reclaim power. Cole reacted before thought could form, not with violence, but with precision. He stepped in and placed his open palm flat against Brent's chest, right over the heart. There was no wind-up, no visible force. The energy traveled from the ground, through Cole's legs, into his core, and out through his hand in a single, controlled release. Brent's feet left the mat. He flew backward as if pushed by something far larger than a man, landing hard, breath ripped from his lungs. The sound echoed. Silence followed. Brent lay staring at the ceiling, chest heaving, eyes wide with disbelief. Pain was secondary. What rattled him was the realization of how close he had come to something irreversible. Cole stepped back immediately, hands open, distance restored. "I stopped," he said again, quieter this time. Lily sobbed, the sound sharp and raw. "Dad, you heard him." Cole knelt in front of her, lowering himself to her eye level. His voice softened. "No, I didn't cross the line. I didn't disappear." She searched his face, looking for proof. Havoc pressed closer to her side, solid and warm. Around them, the students stood frozen. No one cheered. No one moved to help Brent at first. The room felt suspended, as if waiting for permission to breathe again. Harper was the first to step forward. Her face was pale, eyes shining with something like awe mixed with fear. "It wasn't a fight," she said quietly. "It was restraint." Brent finally rolled onto his side, coughing. He looked at Cole now, not with anger, but with something dangerously close to understanding. "You could have," Brent began, then stopped. "Yes," Cole said. "I know." That knowledge sat heavy in the room. As Cole helped Lily gather her things, he felt the weight of what had almost happened settle into his bones. He had walked the edge and come back. But edges remember. They wait. He knew something now with absolute clarity. If he lost control again, there would be no Havoc, no Lily's voice, no second chance to pull him back. Next time, no one would stop him. If this chapter made your heart race, remember? Sometimes God doesn't save us by removing our strength, but by teaching us when not to use it. Please like, share, and comment below, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform so you don't miss what happens when restraint is tested again. No one told Brent Kincaid to get up. He did it because staying down felt worse. The mat was cold against his palms as he pushed himself upright, breath coming in uneven pulls. Sweat streaked his temples, darkening the collar of his black GI, which now looked less like armor and more like a costume that had failed its wearer. His black belt hung slightly crooked at his waist. No longer pristine, no longer commanding, Brent wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and tasted blood. Thin, metallic, humiliating. He looked at Cole. Not with anger this time, with panic. Panic is louder than rage and far more dangerous. "You think this makes you better than me?" Brent snapped, his voice cracking despite his effort to sound firm. His eyes darted briefly to the students, to Harper, to the child clutching the dog. "You think one lucky move lets you stand here and judge me?" Cole didn't answer right away. He stood still, hands loose at his sides, chest rising and falling in an even rhythm that betrayed nothing of the storm he was holding back. Without the jacket, the scars of a hard life showed more clearly now. Not just the faint line above his eyebrow, but the way his shoulders carried weight they never quite released, the way his jaw tightened when words brushed too close to old truths. "This isn't about better," Cole said at last. "It's about stopping." Brent laughed, but it came out sharp and brittle. "Stopping who? Me or yourself?" That landed closer than Brent knew. The room felt smaller. Students backed away almost without realizing it, shoes squeaking faintly on the floor. No one wanted to be close now. Not to Brent's unraveling, not to Cole's restraint. Harper stood frozen near the edge of the mat, hands clenched into fists at her sides, eyes flicking between the two men as if trying to calculate how much damage was already inevitable. Havoc shifted. The German shepherd had been still since sitting beside Lily, but now his muscles tightened, his spine straightening, ears angling sharply forward. The black and tan fur along his shoulders bristled, just enough to catch the light. His amber eyes were fixed on Brent, tracking every movement with unnerving precision. At 5 or 6 years old, Havoc had learned the difference between chaos and threat. This trembling, unpredictable energy was the kind of danger he had been trained to intercept. Brent took a step forward. "Stay back," someone whispered. Brent ignored it. He lunged, not with technique now, but with desperation. His strike was wild, heavy, driven by the need to reclaim control rather than any thought of form. The mat creaked as he pushed off, pouring everything he had into the motion. Havoc growled. It wasn't loud. It wasn't theatrical. It was the sound of a line being crossed. "Stay," Cole said, his voice sharp but steady. The word cut through the air like a command etched into stone. Havoc froze mid-motion. His front paw hovered, inches off the mat. Claws flexed, muscles screaming to act. For a heartbeat, a terrifying, fragile heartbeat, the dog stood on the edge of disobedience. Every instinct in him demanded protection. Every bond he had with Cole pulled him in opposite directions. Cole felt it. That was the moment he knew just how thin the margin truly was. If Havoc moved, everything would collapse. Rules, restraint, the fragile trust holding the room together. Cole stepped forward instead, meeting Brent's charge head-on. He didn't strike to punish. He didn't strike to dominate. He struck to end it. Cole moved inside Brent's momentum, body turning with precise economy. His forearm rose not as a weapon, but as a barrier, redirecting the force rather than absorbing it. His other hand came up, palm open, fingers relaxed, pressing firmly into Brent's shoulder joint. The motion was fluid, almost gentle to the untrained eye. But the effect was absolute. Brent's attack unraveled mid-breath. His feet tangled, balance stolen before he realized it was gone. Cole guided him downward, not slamming him, not throwing him, but removing every option except the floor. Brent hit the mat hard enough to knock the air from his lungs, yet controlled enough to avoid catastrophic injury. The sound echoed. Silence followed. No one cheered. No one clapped. The room held its breath as Brent lay gasping, eyes wide, chest heaving. The fight had ended not with a flourish, but with a conclusion so final it left no room for argument. Havoc exhaled. The tension drained from his body in a visible wave, and he lowered himself slowly back onto the mat, eyes never leaving Brent until Cole glanced at him and nodded once. Only then did the dog relax fully, rising to press against Cole's leg, grounding him. Cole turned away from Brent immediately. Distance restored, hands open. "I told you," Cole said quietly. "I would stop before it went too far." Brent rolled onto his side, coughing, pride in shambles. He stared at Cole as if seeing him clearly for the first time, and hating what that clarity revealed. "Who are you?" he demanded hoarsely. "What kind of man does that?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. Before Cole could respond, a sound cut through the silence. Lily was crying. Not the sharp cry of fear, not the panicked sob of a child terrified by violence. This was softer, broken, as if each breath hurt. She had both hands pressed to her face, shoulders shaking. Cole crossed the room in 3 long strides and dropped to his knees in front of her. "Hey," he said gently, taking her small hands in his. "Look at me." She lifted her head, eyes red, lashes wet. I thought you were going to go away," she whispered, "like in your dreams." The words pierced deeper than any blow Brent had thrown. Cole pulled her into his chest, wrapping his arms around her carefully, as if afraid even his embrace could cause harm. "I'm here," he murmured into her hair. "I'm still here." Havoc pressed in close on her other side, solid and warm, completing the circle without being asked. Around them, the dojo seemed to exhale. Harper lowered herself slowly onto the bench, one hand covering her mouth, eyes bright with unshed tears. A few students looked away, suddenly uncomfortable with the realization that what they had witnessed wasn't entertainment. It was a man choosing not to lose himself. As Cole held Lily, Havoc did something strange. He lifted his head and looked not at Brent, not at the students, but upward, toward the far corner of the ceiling where a small, flickering emergency light cast a faint glow. His ears tilted, his body stilled, and for a brief, inexplicable second, it felt as though he was listening to something no one else could hear. Cole followed the dog's gaze without understanding why. A chill ran through him, not fear, but recognition. The same feeling he got in the moments just before a nightmare ended. As if something unseen had stepped between him and the edge. As if grace had arrived early. Brent struggled to his knees, humiliation burning through him. "You didn't win," he spat weakly. Cole met his eyes, expression unreadable. "I wasn't trying to." Brent's voice broke despite himself. "Then what was the point?" Cole considered the question. The answer came slowly, carefully. "So my daughter wouldn't have to grow up without her father." The words settled over the room like a verdict. Brent said nothing more. As Cole helped Lily gather her things, he felt the weight of the night pressing down on him. Not the weight of violence, but of consequence. He had crossed into visibility now. There was no going back to being the man no one noticed. The choice to stop had cost him anonymity, and cost always came due. As they reached the door, Brent's voice followed them, cracked and raw. "Who are you?" he asked again. Cole paused, hand on the doorframe. He didn't turn around. "I'm the man who learned what happens when you don't stop in time," he said. Outside, the night air was cool, sharp, grounding. Lily held his hand tightly. Havoc walked at his side, steady and silent. Behind them, the dojo stood frozen in the aftermath. And inside every mind left reeling by what they had seen, the same question echoed. One the audience now carried with them too. Who was this man? Really? If this chapter moved you, remember, sometimes God's greatest miracle is not stopping the storm, but teaching a man to stop himself before everything he loves is lost. Please like, share, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform so you don't miss what the truth behind this man's past will reveal next. The room was smaller the next morning, not because the walls had moved, but because truth had a way of stripping space of its illusions. Cole Callahan stood at the center of the dojo without a jacket for the first time since anyone could remember. The olive canvas coat lay folded on a bench beside him, the gray shirt beneath it creased and plain, offering no shield. In the daylight, his face looked older. The angles of his jaw were harder, the short beard threaded with more gray than shadow. The scar above his left eyebrow clearer now that he wasn't trying to hide it. His posture was still straight, still disciplined, but something in his shoulders had lowered, as if he had finally set down a weight he had carried too long. The students sat in a loose semicircle, not ordered, not commanded. They chose to stay. Harper Quinn sat near the front, hands folded in her lap, purple belt resting against her knees. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were alert, ready to receive something heavy. Lily sat on the bench with Havoc at her feet, the German shepherd's black and tan coat catching the morning light. At 5 or 6 years old, Havoc looked older than most dogs his age. Not tired, but seasoned. He lay with his head up, ears relaxed yet attentive, eyes moving slowly across the room as if counting heartbeats. Brent Kincaid stood near the back. He looked different now. His black GI was still clean, but it hung looser on him, as if the confidence that once filled it had drained away. His hair was unstyled, jaw dark with stubble he hadn't bothered to shave. He avoided looking at Cole at first, staring instead at the mat like a man measuring the depth of a fall he already knew the outcome of. Cole cleared his throat. The sound felt loud. "I'm not here to justify what happened," he began. His voice was steady, but it carried a weight that silenced every small movement in the room. "And I'm not here to ask anyone for forgiveness." That alone unsettled them. Most confessions came with requests attached. Understanding, mercy, absolution. Cole offered none. I stayed quiet for a long time, he continued, because I believed silence was safer than truth. He paused, eyes lowering briefly to the mat, then lifting again. For the first time, he didn't look away when he met the gaze of the people in front of him. I was trained to be precise, Cole said. Not just with my hands, with my decisions, with timing, with restraint. His mouth tightened slightly at the last word. And I believed that training made me immune to mistakes. Havoc shifted, adjusting his position, resting his chin briefly on Lily's shoe before lifting his head again. Lily reached down and touched the dog's ear without looking away from her father. There was a man, Cole went on. His name was Mason Delgado. We called him Mac. He didn't smile when he said it. He didn't soften the name. He was my partner, my brother in everything but blood. The room remained silent. He was shorter than me, Cole said, voice even. Lean, quick, always moving. Dark hair, dark eyes. He laughed easily, even in places where laughter didn't belong. Especially there. Cole swallowed once. Mac believed that if you could still laugh, you hadn't lost yourself yet. Brent's shoulders stiffened. We trained together, Cole said. Harder than anyone else. Pushed each other because we trusted each other. His hands flexed once at his sides, then stilled. And one night, I didn't wait. No one interrupted. I moved early, Cole said. Half a second. That's all it takes. Half a second of impatience. Half a second of believing you're right. His eyes flicked briefly to Brent, then away. Mac went down wrong, hit the mat, didn't get up. A sharp breath escaped somewhere in the room. They called it an accident, Cole said. And by the rules, they were right. He lifted his chin slightly. But I knew the truth. I didn't lose control because I was angry. I lost control because I believed I couldn't. Harper felt a chill run through her. I killed my partner, Cole said simply. Not loudly, not dramatically, just as a fact. And after that, I stopped being the man I was trained to be. Lily's breath caught. Havoc leaned closer to her, his body warm and solid, anchoring her in place. I didn't ask for forgiveness then, Cole continued. I don't ask for it now. His gaze swept the room. Because forgiveness doesn't undo what was done. It doesn't bring someone back. It doesn't erase consequence. Brent finally lifted his head. His eyes were red, his expression stripped of arrogance, replaced by something raw and unsettled. I ran, Cole said. I walked away from every place that reminded me of who I was. I chose the smallest life I could find because I thought that was the only way to make sure my hands never hurt anyone again. He exhaled slowly. I was wrong. Havoc suddenly stood, not abruptly, not alarmed, but deliberately. He walked away from Lily and stopped directly in front of Cole, sitting squarely at his feet. The movement drew every eye. Havoc looked up at Cole, ears relaxed, gaze steady, tail still. It wasn't obedience. It was acknowledgement. Cole felt his throat tighten. For a moment, it felt as if the dog was bearing witness. Not judging, not accusing, simply present as if saying, "You're still here. You can still choose." The air in the room felt different after that, charged with something quiet and profound. Cole placed a hand on Havoc's head briefly, grounding himself. I didn't come back because I wanted to fight, he said. I came back because I saw what happens when power is left unchecked. His eyes moved to Harper. And because someone stood up when it would have been easier to stay silent. Harper's jaw tightened. She nodded once. I'm not asking, you to trust me," Cole continued. "And I'm not asking to teach." He paused. "I'm saying this out loud because hiding it almost let it happen again." Brent took a shaky step forward. "If you knew all this," he asked quietly, "why didn't you leave sooner?" Cole met his gaze without flinching. "Because if I leave every time I'm afraid of myself, someone else will pay the price." The truth of that settled heavily. "I won't ask you to forgive me," Cole said. "But I will say this. Strength doesn't become safe by being buried. It becomes safe by being understood, trained, watched." His voice softened slightly. "And if I don't pass that lesson on, then Mac's death means nothing." No one spoke. Lily finally slid off the bench and walked toward her father. She stopped a step away, looking up at him with eyes far too old for her age. "You didn't disappear," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. Cole knelt in front of her. "No," he said. "I didn't." She nodded once, as if storing that answer somewhere deep. Brent inhaled, steadying himself. "You don't owe us this," he said. "But—" He trailed off, then finished honestly. "I don't know how to stop people like me." Cole rose slowly. "That's the problem," he said. "No one ever taught you." The words weren't cruel. They were precise. As the group began to disperse, the weight of the confession lingered. Nothing had been resolved. Nothing had been forgiven. But something essential had been exposed. And that, Cole knew, was the point. He watched Lily and Havoc walk toward the door, the dog's tail brushing lightly against her leg, steady and protective. Cole understood something now, with absolute clarity. If he didn't teach, carefully, honestly, without ego, then the next time a man lost control, there might be no voice to stop him, and no one to step between the blow and the floor. If this chapter spoke to you, remember, God does not call us to hide our brokenness, but to bring it into the light so it cannot harm again. Please like, share, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform to continue this journey of truth, accountability, and quiet redemption. Morning came quietly, without ceremony. The dojo doors opened on time, the lights hummed on, and the mats lay where they always had, clean, neutral, waiting. There was no banner announcing change, no speech prepared in advance. Cole Callahan arrived early, as he had every day since deciding not to run. He wore the same olive drab jacket, the same gray shirt, the same scuffed boots that had carried him through a smaller life. The difference wasn't visible. It was internal. He no longer checked the exits first. He checked the room. Students drifted in, some familiar, some new, uncertain but curious. They didn't call him Sensei. No one had agreed on what to call him at all. Cole didn't correct them when they simply said his name. He didn't need a title. He moved among them with calm authority born not of rank, but of responsibility. When he demonstrated a stance, it wasn't flashy. When he corrected a grip, it was gentle, exact, and brief. He taught with restraint, not dominance, and the room responded. People listened harder when no one was trying to impress them. Havoc lay near the wall, chin resting on his paws. At 5 or 6, the German shepherd had begun to show the subtle signs of age. A stiffness when he rose, a slower turn of the head. His black and tan coat was still glossy, his amber eyes still sharp, but time had started to soften his edges. He watched everything anyway, always watching. When a new student entered too quickly, Havoc's ears lifted. When a child laughed too loud, his tail thumped once, then stilled. He didn't intervene. He witnessed. Lily sat on the bench with a notebook open, sketching the room. She had drawn her father with simple lines, broad shoulders, steady hands, and Havoc at his side, larger than life. When Cole caught her eye, she smiled, small and certain. She no longer asked if he would disappear. She asked what time they'd be home for dinner. Brent Kincaid arrived late and stood by the door, unsure. He looked different now, not because he had changed clothes, his black GI remained, but because he wore it without armor. His shoulders were less rigid. His eyes didn't search for approval. When Cole noticed him, he nodded once. No words. That was enough. Cole began the class without announcement. "Today," he said, voice steady, "we're not starting with strikes." He paused, scanning faces. "We're starting with balance." They practiced breathing first, then stance, then the slow transfer of weight from heel to toe. It felt almost too simple, and that was the point. Cole watched their shoulders, their jaws, the way tension revealed itself before movement did. He corrected one student gently, guiding her elbow into alignment. She nodded, surprised at how the small change made her feel safer. Havoc lifted his head suddenly and walked to the center of the mat, unprompted. He stood there, facing the class, tail low, posture calm. The room quieted instinctively. Cole felt the shift and turned. Havoc sat, square and patient, eyes moving from face to face. It wasn't a command. It was a reminder. Cole felt a pressure behind his eyes. Not sadness, not fear, recognition. The dog was aging. Time was claiming inches he could never reclaim. And yet, here he was, choosing presence over rest. Cole cleared his throat and said softly, "Watch him. That's balance." The students did, and something settled into them that no lecture could have delivered. After class, Cole walked Lily home. The air smelled of rain and concrete. Havoc moved between them, steady but slower now, nails clicking lightly on the sidewalk. Lily asked about homework and dinner and whether Havoc could have chicken. Cole listened. He answered. He stayed. That weekend, Cole drove alone to the cemetery at the edge of town. The sky was overcast, light diffused and forgiving. He parked, stepped out, and adjusted his jacket. The gravel crunched under his boots as he walked the familiar path to a simple headstone. Mason Mac Delgado. No slogans, no excuses. Just a name and two dates that felt too close together. Cole stood there for a long time. He didn't kneel. He didn't bow his head. He looked straight at the stone, hands open at his sides. "I'm not here to ask you to forgive me," he said quietly. "I don't know if that's something I get to ask." The wind moved through the trees, a soft rush like breath. "I stayed," Cole continued. "I didn't disappear again." He paused, choosing honesty over comfort. "I don't know if that makes anything right." He swallowed. "But I'm teaching them how to stop." No promises followed, no declarations of redemption. Just that. He turned to leave, then stopped and added, almost as an afterthought, "I won't run." At home, Lily waited at the table with Havoc at her feet. The dog rose more slowly now, greeting Cole with a quiet wag and a firm lean against his leg. Cole knelt and rubbed behind Havoc's ears, careful with the pressure. "You're doing good," he murmured. Havoc's eyes half closed, content. Weeks passed. The dojo filled, not with spectacle, but with consistency. Cole taught without raising his voice. Brent assisted without asserting authority. Harper trained harder than ever, her movements cleaner, her gaze steadier. No one spoke about miracles, but people felt them anyway. In the way tempers cooled, in the way a child felt safe standing at the edge of the mat, in the way power stopped being the point Havoc aged with dignity. His steps shortened, his naps lengthened. He still came every day, still watched, still chose presence. One afternoon, as Cole demonstrated a controlled takedown, Havoc stood and barked once, sharp, clear, then sat again. The students froze, startled. Cole smiled faintly. "That's enough," he said, ending the drill. "Listen when the warning comes early." They did. On a quiet evening, Lily sat beside Cole on the porch, knees tucked up, the sky fading from gray to blue. "Dad," she said, not looking at him, "are you happy?" Cole considered the question. He thought of the mat, the breath, the choice to stop. He thought of the cemetery and the quiet promise he hadn't spoken aloud. He thought of Havoc's steady presence, even as time asked its due. "I'm here," he said. "That's enough." Lily nodded, satisfied. The dojo lights went dark that night, as they always did. No applause, no headlines. Just a room where people had learned to stay. If this final chapter stayed with you, remember, God's quiet miracles often look like consistency, courage, and the choice not to run. Please like, share, comment what this story meant to you, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform so we can keep telling stories where strength serves life. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not a dramatic rescue or a powerful victory, but the quiet moment when a person chooses restraint over rage, truth over pride, and responsibility over escape. God does not always remove our strength. Sometimes He teaches us when not to use it, and in that wisdom, lives are changed. In our daily lives, we face moments where anger, fear, or ego tempt us to act too quickly. This story is a reminder that grace often appears as a pause, a second chance, or the courage to stay when leaving would be easier. If this message touched your heart, please share it with someone who may need hope today. Leave a comment with what it meant to you, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue telling stories that honor faith, compassion, and quiet miracles. May God bless and protect everyone watching, guide your choices, and bring peace into your home and your life.